Hello, and welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're confronting some really disturbing stuff. We're looking at the impact of cults on people's lives, often hidden away. Our mission really is to take these real-life accounts, these stories, and try to understand how these groups actually operate and, the kind of influence they have on individuals. We've got four pretty harrowing stories today, shared by the people who actually lived through them. And these aren't just like isolated horror stories. They really open a window onto the insidious nature of control, manipulation, and, well, the vulnerabilities that cults often prey on, things we don't always see.
Exactly. And as we unpack these, we're not just recounting events. That's not the main goal. We want to try and understand the psychological mechanisms behind it all, the patterns you see again and again, the power dynamics. What do these stories tell us, about human nature, our resilience, but also, our susceptibility? It really makes you ask, how do these systems even take root? And what makes people vulnerable in the first place?
Right. So if you're ready, let's start exploring these, well, quite unsettling real cult encounters. Okay, our first story. This one takes us into a fundamentalist Christian group. It's known as ATI, the Advanced Training Institute. It's part of a bigger organization, the IBLP Institute in Basic Life Principles, led by a man named Bill Gothard. Now, you might have heard about Gothard recently. Scandals, allegations from over 50 women about sexual harassment. But what our source tells us is that that's really just scratching the surface. There's something much, much darker going on.
Yeah, and it's crucial to grasp the structure here, the IBLP hierarchy. It puts the father absolutely at the top, then the mother, then the children, in birth order. This isn't just, a belief system. It's engineered. It's a power structure. And when you combine that with really twisted interpretations of Scripture, well, it creates the perfect storm for systemic abuse. It actually makes victims feel like they have to endure it, spiritually speaking, just like our source describes.
And, like you said, the structure. ATI pushed homeschooling, which meant it was incredibly easy to just seal the family off, no outside eyes. For 11 years, this person says their home was basically a prison. Then, when they were 13, their father died. And they were labeled rebellious. Why? For resisting abuse. For being depressed, which the cult saw as a sin. For asking too many questions, that was a big one. So their mother sent them away.
And that right there, that's a core cult tactic, isn't it? Demonizing independent thought. Demonizing any sign of weakness or vulnerability. Instead of helping someone deal with trauma, the quote-unquote solution is more isolation, a program to fix them. It turns their own struggles against them. Creates this awful cognitive dissonance where the suffering is framed as purification.
Yeah. So this led to this really secretive program. They called it the Log Cabin Program. The mother told very little, the child, even less, just that they were going to Oklahoma to be fixed by nice counselors because they were a dirty sinner. So Wednesday, July 11th, 2001, this 13-year-old kid is dropped off at a lockdown compound near Skiatook, Oklahoma, called the Eagle Spring Training Center. Looked like a residential childcare facility on the outside. And the mother, totally under the cult's influence, literally signed custody over to complete strangers in the middle of nowhere.
That act, a parent just handing over their child like that to some unknown secretive group, it's profoundly chilling. And what followed for the next 2 years, systematic torture. We're talking brainwashing techniques, severe starvation.
Yeah.
They lost 40 pounds in the first month or two.
40 pounds.
Yeah. Extreme sleep deprivation, threats with a shotgun, constant punishment, humiliation, interrogation, terror. They were even taken off necessary medications, cold turkey. Suffered severe withdrawal symptoms that were just ignored. This isn't just discipline. It's a deliberate strategy to dismantle someone, to strip away their identity, their agency, their sense of self.
It's hard to even imagine. Grueling physical tasks, pointless tasks, day in, day out, scrubbing floors on hands and knees until their knuckles were cracked, bleeding from bleach. The staff, apparently, had fun coming up with new and strange punishments designed to break the student's will. That was the goal. One example forced vows of silence. For days, sometimes weeks, tasks deliberately designed so they couldn't succeed, which meant more punishment, more public humiliation, forcing confessions of humiliating sins, whether they happened or not in front of everyone, dozens of people. And the living conditions. You mentioned starvation, but also spoiled food, undercooked food, water treated with chemicals that burn their throat going down. They even spent 2.5 weeks in solitary confinement, with just one Christian song playing over and over. The lyrics were something like, "Trust in the Lord, he makes no mistakes, for when I am tried and purified, I shall come forth as gold."
That specific song, that's just textbook spiritual abuse. It's horrifying. It reframes the torture as something divine, something beneficial. God's putting you through fire because he loves you. It twists their faith into a tool of control, makes them blame themselves for the abuse. And what's really terrifying, as the source points out, this wasn't some one-off thing. The log cabin program and others like it, even ones for Russian orphans, they secretly tortured children, sometimes kids sent there by judges. And investigations into the abuse often just swept under the rug. Bill Gothard, the IBLP, they had too many powerful friends, too many connections.
It's sickening how influence and that veneer of piety can just shield such awful actions. Okay, let's move. Second story. Southern California this time, Orange County. A woman named Frances Marie Klug. She set herself up as a religious cult leader, claims she was a prophet. She formed her own group, the Hill of Hope Congregation, after breaking away from the Catholic Church.
That's a common pattern, actually. You see a lot. A charismatic figure claims some special connection to the divine. They braid from established religion, create their own movement. It offers exclusivity, a higher truth. Often draws in people who feel let down by traditional institutions. The key thing is setting up a new, absolute authority figure, the leader.
Right. So Klug got a lot of followers. But her own son, Jack, definitely not one of them. He used to hang out with our source's father in nearby orange groves, smoking weed, talking badly about his mother and her followers. Klug herself, even though she was elderly, always had these armed guards around her. Bodyguard-type dudes, the source called them, made her seem really intimidating. Apparently, these guards would even go looking for Jack in the groves. He'd have to hide from them.
Armed guards, actively hunting the leader's own son. That tells you volumes about the paranoia, the demand for absolute loyalty. It's clearly not about community or spiritual growth at that point. It's about control, fear-driven obedience, even within the immediate family. It shows the leader needs total, unquestioning control over everything and everyone.
So the Hill of Hope group started building this, a compound, a fort almost, in Carbon Canyon. And during this time, the conflict between Jack and his mother got worse and worse, more intense. Then eventually, Jack just disappeared, stopped showing up, vanished. Now, our source's father has this chilling belief. He thinks Frances Klug had her followers kill her own son, and that his body is buried under the cement foundations of the Hill compound. Jack disappeared. Klug seemed completely unfazed. The concrete was poured shortly after he vanished. His friend, the source's father's friend, was never seen again. And incredibly, that Hill of Hope compound, guarded, secretive, it's reportedly still there today.
The implication is incredibly dark.
Yeah.
A leader orchestrating their own child's disappearance, likely murder.
Yeah.
The fact that the compound remains still guarded, still secret. It really makes you wonder how long can secrets like that stay buried, physically and psychologically. It shows how the cult's influence, the fear, can last for decades, long after the leader might be gone, maintaining that silence.
Yeah, the legacy of fear definitely outlives the person who started it. Okay, story number 3. This one's a different kind of terrifying. Shows how fast a normal, everyday situation can turn really disturbing. It's from someone who was 17, working in a grocery store deli. Small town, a place they described, kind of wryly, as having a concentrated amount of crazy people.
And that highlights a real vulnerability, doesn't it? People in public-facing jobs, especially if their name's right there on a name tag, they can become targets. People with cult-like thinking or severe delusions, they often seek out and fixate on individuals, exploit that accessibility.
So this older man, Emmanuel Lambranch, started showing up, began asking personal questions, making her uncomfortable. A week later, he asked if he could take her picture. She said no. Then a coworker saw him hiding, secretly taking a photo of her through a window. 2 weeks after that, he came back, waited until she wasn't busy, and asked her to be his hostess for these readings he held at his house, way out in the country, every Thursday night. He specifically said he wanted a beautiful woman to greet his guests and be admired by his side, pastis. He also mentioned there was a community of people living out there on his land.
That's classic grooming behavior, step by step. Start small, test boundaries, escalate things subtly, then make an offer that maybe sounds appealing on the surface, but it's loaded with sinister intent. And mentioning the community, that's a tactic to make it sound less isolated, less dangerous, like a legitimate group. It masks the real plan.
Where?
Isolation and control.
Right. So she kept saying no, rejecting him, but he wouldn't stop. A few days later, he came back to the store. This time he gave her a stack of flyers. Said he'd been handing them out door to door. She read them on her break. One was this really explicit sexual love poem he typed out to her. Another was some kind of political flyer, like he was running for office. But the third one, this was the truly terrifying one, it announced the creation of a new kingdom with Emmanuel Lambranch as the leader. And she, her full name, printed right there, was named as his bride. His intended bride. It even said he'd hired a local artist to paint a big portrait of her as his bride. Said it was hanging over his fireplace. And that they were destined to have children, descendants, to rule this new kingdom.
Wow, that's where delusion just crashes right into reality in the most terrifying way possible. It's not just some private fantasy anymore. It's a public declaration. It strips her of her autonomy, claims ownership over her identity, her future, using her full name like that, handing out flyers. It moves from creepy obsession to a direct, tangible threat. It's such a profound violation, fueled by this belief system that sees no difference between fantasy and reality, and obviously zero need for her consent. That escalation shows a total break from reality testing on his part.
Her mother, understandably, called the police immediately. They got a restraining order. But even then, he kept coming to the store. For weeks, just watching her for hours, until finally a manager banned him for good. Emmanuel Lambranch was actually jailed later that summer for violent behavior unrelated to her, but it confirmed this wasn't just some harmless eccentric. He was genuinely dangerous. Driven by these intense delusional beliefs, shows how fast obsession can become a real, clear danger if it's not checked. Okay, our last story for today, and it's deeply unsettling, comes from someone who grew up in what they call an Islamic cult, led by a fake guru holy man. This man used to lead group chants. Often in dim light, everyone's eyes closed. During one of these sessions, our source, just a young teenager, then opened their eyes. And they locked eyes with the guru, and in that instant, they just couldn't help it. They laughed because it suddenly struck them how dumb it all was.
That single moment, that flash of defiance, of seeing through the whole performance, that's often so critical and dangerous. Cults thrive on unquestioning belief. Any sign of skepticism, any hint that someone sees the cracks in the facade, it's seen as a massive threat to the leader's power. It can trigger their anger, their retribution.
And it did. From that moment on, the guru had it in for them. A vendetta. He claimed he could read the future. And he used this claim to turn the parents against their own child. Convinced them that this teenager would break their hearts and destroy the family. Some future betrayal. The parents... They were completely under his spell. They started treating their 13-year-old like this terrible thing had already happened, punishing them for something they hadn't even done. Then the guru started deliberately favoring the older brother, showering him with gifts, expensive stuff, Gucci watches, a brand new Mitsubishi Jeep with a private number plate before he even had a license, executive box seats at sports games. While at the same time, the guru started this smear campaign against our narrator, convinced all the followers that the narrator was mentally handicapped, that they needed to be isolated from everyone.
That is just a devastatingly cruel tactic. Deliberately tearing apart a family, isolating a child, and then fabricating this whole narrative, this lie, to justify treating them terribly. It's psychological warfare, really. Gaslighting on a massive scale, designed to make the victim doubt their own sanity, their own worth, while cementing the leader's power by showing he can control even parent-child relationships. The long-term damage is immense.
Yeah. For most of their teenage years, they said they'd come home from school or later university to an empty house. Didn't see anyone for weeks sometimes. And this lie, the story about them being retarded, it spread through the whole community, became accepted as fact. It even stopped them from getting married later on. Then the guru basically bankrupted the parents, made them pay all his bills, his expenses, his reward for them. These elaborate but ultimately empty prayers, which just kept them tied to him, dependent. And then the final betrayal, the worst one. The narrator was given responsibility for their little cousin, a 2-year-old girl. The guru saw his chance. Launched an even more horrific accusation. He convinced everyone the narrator was a pedophile, molesting the baby, made sure they could never be left alone with her again. He completely persuaded the parents that the narrator was their enemy, and that the guru's own sons were their real sons. Basically told them to erase their own child.
That level of manipulation, it's just pure malice. It's hard to comprehend. Completely dismantling someone's life, their family, their reputation, their dignity, replacing love with this manufactured hate. The narrator says even now, they've never had a real heart-to-heart with their parents. They only seem interested in money, in payday. But despite all that unimaginable trauma, the narrator says they became a better person than anyone realized. And they've managed to forgive their parents now that, in their words, that bastard has been dragged to hell.
It's an incredible story of resilience, but the source leaves us with this really chilling thought. that there are millions of holy men like this all over the world, easily gathering followers, using cheap parlor tricks, vague prophecies, and unprovable claims, like saying they travel to Jupiter in spirit form.
And that really forces you to think, doesn't it? Why are people so susceptible? It comes back to those deep human needs, I think. Belonging, meaning, answers to life's big questions. And unfortunately, that vulnerability can be exploited by people offering easy answers, but at a terrible price. It's such a stark reminder about discernment, about telling the difference between genuine guidance and, well, manipulative exploitation. Understanding the psychology confirmation bias, social proof that makes people fall for flimsy claims. That line between belief and coercion is so thin.
These 4 stories, they really give us a stark, quite sobering look at the dark side of belief, the depths of manipulation possible. From abuse hidden in a family hierarchy to a leader's violent control, the creepy grooming by an obsessed individual, and the total psychological destruction by a manipulative guru. The patterns, they're disturbingly similar, aren't they?
They really are. And what's striking is how, despite the different contexts, they all point to the same core needs. The need to question authority, to maintain personal boundaries, to foster critical thinking, both in ourselves and in our communities. And the impact, the physical trauma, the psychological scars, the broken families, ruined reputations, it's a powerful warning about blind faith and unchecked power. The strength needed to overcome these things is immense.
So what's a takeaway for you listening to this?
Well, one of our sources had this message for people in similar situations. They said, your family is ill. If they were of sound mind, they wouldn't be doing these things. Be kind, be good, be better than them. Peace. Hick. Maybe that's the most profound point from today's deep dive. The power of holding on to your own thoughts, your own compassion, even when faced with intense control. How do we build communities that actually uplift people, empower them, instead of exploiting and destroying them? We hope these stories, as disturbing as they are, give you something to think about, encourage you to look deeper, think critically, and maybe trust your gut instinct a bit more. Thank you for joining us on this really important and, yes, disturbing deep dive. We hope you'll continue exploring the psychology of influence, the importance of healthy boundaries. Until next time, stay curious and keep seeking the truth.